Welcome to First Chapter Fridays. My name is Giles and I work at the Downtown Reno branch. The book I'm going to share with you today is called Night Witches, a novel of World War II. It's by Kathryn Lasky and it's from Scholastic Press. It's one of the intermediate nominees for the 2021 Nevada Young Reader Award, so that's why I chose to share it with you today. So again, this is Night Witches, a novel of World War II. Kathryn Lasky is the author. Chapter 1, Stalingrad, 1941. Nacht Wind, I whispered to myself as I crouched in the rubble of our apartment building and watched the searchlights scraping the night, looking for those tiny planes, the U-2 trainers. Tatiana and I had both learned to fly these light biplanes, their four wings made with wood and canvas, open cockpit. No parachutes. In these fragile machines, the women of the 588th Regiment harassed the German 6th Army. The engines purr so softly that the Germans call them sewing machines. But like small, sharp-beaked predatory birds, they will keep up the harassment until the dawn. The Germans set up the searchlights to defend their fuel depots, ammunition dumps, ground troops, and support vehicles, all tactical targets for our Russian army. But that won't stop the night witches of the 588th Regiment, who weave through their sweeping beams of light in the loom of the Stalingrad night. The young women who attack Hitler's forces from the sky. My sister Tatiana is one of them. I might have been too if I had lied about my age, but Mama wouldn't let me lie. Although I'm only 2 years younger than Tatiana, my family has always treated me like I'm still a baby. They let Tatiana wear lipstick when she was 12, but somehow I was still too young at 12. As for going downtown alone or with a friend, that wasn't allowed until this summer, and then the Germans came and wrecked everything. Suddenly there were Nazi soldiers on every street corner. They would stop you for no reason, and they loved to check young pretty girls for weapons or cigarettes. It was not simple frisking. Groping would be a better word. But then the heavy tanks rolled in and the lewd glances of the soldiers were replaced by sniper fire and heavy bombs. The shelling had been constant ever since. Mama is asleep now, beside me in this corner that we fashioned into a sleeping place. What was our living room is now strewn with bricks. One wall was blown out entirely 2 days ago. 3 remaining walls still stand at right angles to one another. I stare at a calendar at one of the walls. How can a calendar be left? The bookshelves next to the calendar are in smithereens. Once there were books all over the apartment, but now there are only fragments of pages that blow about, like lost sheep scattered from the flock. For nearly 2 days I have tried to gather up some of these pages. It's a ridiculous task. If they weren't torn, they are scorched. I cannot imagine what I will do with them. I spy another page, an illustration from the wonderful Wizard of Oz, Glinda the Good Witch of the South. She doesn't have a broom. No U-2 aircraft either. The Good Witch travels in a luminous peach-colored orb of light, wearing a flowing gown. Not like our night witches in their flight helmets and goggles, with pistols tucked into their belts instead of wands. They have 175 kilos of bombs tucked under each wing. As I bend over to retrieve the page with Glinda the Good Witch, I see my sister's broken sports trophies nearby. I could never really equal my sister as an athlete, but my parents didn't want me to feel bad, so they made up a certificate for me that read, "Valya, you are the bright red star of our hearts." In a funny way, that certificate made it worse. I remember Tatiana's expression when she presented it to me at dinner that night. As Papa was making his little speech, there was a pitying smile on her face that said clear as any words that I would never be her equal, never quite catch up. I love my sister, don't get me wrong, but her concern for me would be incredibly grating. Our biggest fight happened during the junior track meet when she tried to show me how she sailed over the hurdles. She had a particular way of jackknifing her knees up so she never grazed the boards. It worked for her, but not for me. It will, she said, when you get a little bit taller, maybe a centimeter. That's not the issue, I snapped. I was tall for my age and already nearly her height. It won't work. I am not a centimeter smaller copy of you, no matter how badly everyone wants me to be. In the next track meet, however, I did do well, very well. But no one paid one bit of attention to me. Why? Because in the event just before mine, the pole vault, Tatiana had broken the long-standing girls' record for our school. Hardly anyone was there to witness my accomplishment. They were all over on the field where the pole vaulting took place. My best friend Iriana was sitting in the bleachers practically all by herself, clapping her hands violently and whooping her lungs out. Tatiana has always outshone me in everything, except for flying. My sister and I had both learned to fly by the time we were 12 years old. Our father was head of the flight training program at Ingalls Air Base, not far from Stalingrad. I had flown Yak trainers, U-2s, and several others. It was not that unusual, as flying clubs had become very popular between the two wars. We were just very lucky to have a father who was not only a seasoned pilot, but a major in the Russian Air Force, renowned for his skillful instruction. Some pilots are great flyers, but not especially good teachers. Our father was a great flyer and a great teacher. I noticed that not only is the calendar intact, but the pencil is still suspended on a string beside it. From where I am crouched, I can see that Mama made a mark on the calendar 2 days ago. That was when my grandmother, my babushka, was killed. Why would Mama do that? Was the mark for my grandmother? A tombstone made from a pencil? She was killed by a roof timber that crashed when the Nazis dropped the bomb that took down the wall. Her head was smashed in on one side, and yet her face was remarkably unscathed. There was, however, a startled look in her eyes, as if she were asking, "How could you do this to me?" Her limbs were all askew, like a marionette that had come loose from its strings. Her legs were broken in several places, and one leg from her knee down was bent back at a crazy angle. Somehow in the rubble, Mama found a lace-trimmed handkerchief and placed it over my grandmother's eyes, as if she didn't want Babushka to see the devastation of what had been her home for nearly 30 years. Then Mama bent over with deep concentration and began to gently move her legs and arms, tending to this broken marionette. I made myself watch, pressing my hands against my mouth so I would not cry out aloud. But Mama did not shed a tear. She just murmured softly to Babushka, as she whispered to her when I had been a child with a high fever. "It's all right, Mama. Lena is here. You'll be right as rain tomorrow. Lena is here. Right as rain, but the sun will shine." Shortly after that, the Germans seized our city. Like an invading herd of rabid beasts, the Nazi bombers turned the sky dark. First the Stutkas, dive bombers, then the tanks. It was hard to believe even a mouse could have survived the bombardment, let alone human beings. The sound was so deafening for so long that Mama and I couldn't hear each other for several hours. The sky is still brown from the dust and ashes of the bombing. Air raid warning sirens rake our days and nights, along with the ceaseless bark of an urgent voice from our local Kamasol mall. "Air raid! Air raid!" But even the shelters have been bombed and our neighborhood cratered out so that the exposed cellars offer no protection at all. A Kamasol unit comes routinely through our street to collect the bodies. They took Babushka away within hours, but they missed the horse in the pile of rubble with its legs sticking up in the air. Across the street from us, the entire block had been wiped out except for 2 buildings that leaned shoulder to shoulder like 2 old cripples trying to prop each other up. A few blocks down the street, a main sewer line has been bombed. Now the stench from a vast pool of sewage engulfs the neighborhood. It's hard for me to believe that just 1 month ago, the scent of cinnamon swirled through our apartment as Babushka's summer pudding cake baked in the oven. Across the street from our apartment, a wrecked Panzer tank is serving as a refuge for 2 families. I witnessed earlier a fight when relatives from one of the families arrived wanting to move in, but they were turned away. A maple tree on the corner had just started to turn golden when a few days ago an explosion from a phosphorus bomb snagged it. The tree burst into flame, a pre-autumnal flare, precisely the color it would have been in another 2 weeks. Now it was a blackened corpse. It was the only tree on our block. 4 months ago, I had helped Mama plant pansies around its base. Mama believed that from every window in our apartment we should be able to see something lovely, but now the tree is gone. The object of our pride replaced by a new pride, the very unlovely Pac 38 anti-tank gun that our Red Army captured. I turned the calendar back 3 pages to January 22nd. That was the day that the unthinkable occurred. The Nazis invaded Russia. Operation Barbarossa, they called it, the largest invasion force ever assembled in Europe, burst like a tidal wave across the Soviet border. The non-aggression pact Stalin had agreed with Hitler was now obsolete within the space of one morning. Over 700 Russian aircraft were instantaneously destroyed while still on the ground. Then came the official announcement over loudspeakers blasting throughout the city from Commander Molotov, Commissioner of Foreign Affairs. Men and women, citizens of the Soviet Union. His voice seemed to tremble. At 4 a.m., and without declaration of war and without any claims being made on the Soviet Union, German troops attacked our country. We all froze. I remember exactly where everyone was. Mama, Babushka, Tatiana, and I were all in the kitchen. Babushka was sitting reading a newspaper at the table with her magnifying glass. She recoiled suddenly as though articles reporting Hitler's gains in Slovakia and Bulgaria had leaped into life in front of her very eyes. She looked towards the door as if expecting a jackbooted Nazi to burst in. Mama was standing up, turning the tuning pegs of her violin. The D string was off. Tatiana was about to bite into a bun. It was the season for the delicious cherry-filled pastries. I was reading Huckleberry Finn for the 3rd or 4th time. How I longed for his river. Our river, the Volga, was a wall the Nazis were pressing us up against, but the big broad Mississippi was pure freedom. Huck says, in 2 seconds away we went sliding down the river, and it did seem so good to be free again, and all by ourselves on the big river, and nobody to bother us. How I wanted to slide away. Molotov's voice continued, gathering strength as he spoke. The government calls upon you, men and women citizens of the Soviet Union, to rally even more closely around the glorious Bolshevik Party, around the Soviet government and our great leader, Comrade Stalin. Our cause is just. The enemy will be crushed. Victory will be ours. I remember looking at Tatiana, then shifting my eyes to Mama. A secret signal seemed to crackle between them, as it always did right before Papa left for an undisclosed location. An air base, undoubtedly, since he was a major. None of them ever included me in those looks. I'm not sure if it's just to protect me or if they assumed I was too young to understand. Tatiana put down the bun, wiped her mouth, and reached for her pocketbook hanging on a peg. I got up to follow. Mama reached out and grabbed me. No, not you, she cried. I watched Tatiana head out. Where is she going? The Commerce Hall? I asked, referring to the student branch of the Communist Party. Mama's face went pale. Where is she going? I repeated. To the People's Volunteers. To the PV? I repeated, feeling a rush of excitement. Then I am going too. I am also part of this war. I can fly. I don't have to sit on the ground doing nothing. No, you're not. Mama's fingers dug into my shoulder. You're too young. You don't have the training yet. I scored higher than Tatiana on the grade 3 navigation test at Ingalls, and I was a year younger when I took it. I don't care how high you scored. The only place you're going is to be with me. The grocery store, I said. Mama, please. I can help. I'm a great pilot. You know I am. Papa said so. His commanding officer, General Akiva, said so. Let your sister fly. We had to eat. The anger that had been bubbling up in my chest turned to ash. They didn't trust me, didn't believe in me. The Germans might have turned our world upside down, but some things would never change. We weren't the only ones who decided to go to the store. The streets were chaos, and when we got to the grocery store, the line was blocks long. By the time we got home, Tatiana had returned and left again. Babushka was still at the table, tears running down her face. She turned to us. She's already left for training. She took her warmest jacket, and I gave her my fur wrap, she said dully. Your fur wrap, Mama repeated. The one you wear to the opera? Yes. I doubt I'll have to use it for quite a while. I told her to cut it up and line her boots. Winter will be here soon enough. I looked down at the table. The half-eaten bun was still there, surrounded by crumbs. How could this all have happened so fast? In less time than it had taken me to eat my breakfast, my sister had gone to war. Soon she'd be in the air, leaving me on the ground as useless as scattering crumbs. So if you like this first chapter, go ahead and visit Washoe County Library's website to see the various ways you can access and read the rest of this book. Thanks again for stopping by First Chapter Friday.